This is not a love story, it's a story about power using motherhood as a weapon. She enters the clinic hoping to create life. Unknowingly, she becomes the vessel for a dynasty built on violence. He believes bloodline is legacy. She believes motherhood is freedom, but the tragedy begins when both dreams are hijacked by men who treat human life like currency. In this story, the real horror is not just the Mafia war, it's how one woman's body becomes the battlefield for male ego, inheritance, and revenge. And once that machine starts moving, nobody remains innocent.
So get this. This woman just wanted a baby, a totally normal life. She hits up this super exclusive clinic, picks a donor from an iPad like she's ordering lunch, and pays a ridiculous fee. Should have been simple, sterile, and safe. But plot twist. The vial she got didn't come from some broke med student. It belonged to the most savage dude on the East Coast, a guy who never ever leaves loose ends. He was supposed to be a nobody donor, but when the entire underworld finds out she's carrying the heir to a criminal dynasty, her quiet life is toast. She bought herself a dream, but she kicked off a damn war, all starting at the Lane Institute of Family Planning in a shiny Boston skyscraper. This place was so high-end, it didn't even advertise. You had to have an in just to get a meeting. For Scarlett Hayes, a 32-year-old architectural preservationist, it took 6 months and a huge chunk of her savings to even get in the door. So now she's in the waiting room, nervously fidgeting with a ring. The whole place smells like a weird mix of expensive flowers and a hospital, a combo meant to chill out the 1%ers. Scarlett wasn't one of them. She was just a woman whose biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was blaring like a fire alarm. After 2 busted engagements and a rough medical diagnosis, Scarlett made the biggest boss move of her life. She was going to be a mom, all on her own. A nurse in crisp white scrubs leads her into Dr. Alistair Lane's swanky office. This guy is a silver-haired dude with a politician's smooth charm and a shark's eyes. He points her to a chair across his massive desk. "Scarlett, great to finalize this," Dr. Lane says, tapping his tablet. "Your blood work is perfect. Hormones are primed for the transfer. We just need to confirm your selection." He slides the tablet over. On the screen is a top-secret donor profile. Profile 409, ethnicity Italian-American, height 6'3", occupation private equity entrepreneur, health flawless, 0 genetic red flags, high IQ. But here's the thing, no pictures. The Lane Institute forbid them to keep their high rollers anonymous. Instead of a photo, there's a little audio clip of a deep, scratchy voice reading some generic poem and a list of his features. Dark hair, piercing pale blue eyes, athletic build. "He's perfect," Scarlett whispers like she's in a trance. Almost too perfect. She asks if he's waived all his rights, wanting to make sure no one comes looking for her kid down the road. Dr. Lane flashes a practiced, reassuring smile. Profile 409 is one of our most secure files. The donor gave this sample years ago before a risky medical procedure. He has 0 interest in children. He signed an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. He's a ghost, Scarlett. He is just the genetic blueprint for your dream, the doc says. She lets out a breath she feels like she's been holding forever. Then let's do it. Let's make a baby. 2 weeks later, the procedure is over. 4 weeks after that, Scarlett's on the edge of her tub, staring at a plastic stick. 2 bold pink lines are staring right back. She covers her mouth and tears of pure, insane joy roll down her cheeks. She's pregnant. The next 4 months are a total blur of prenatal vitamins, ultrasounds, and painting the nursery in her Cambridge townhouse a soft, buttery yellow. She feels the first little kicks at 18 weeks. A boy, her son. She's never been this happy. She's living in a perfect little bubble of bliss. Little does she know that bubble is about to get popped by a bullet. See, Gabriel Rossi didn't deal in ghosts. He made them. 30 miles from Scarlett's cozy home, in the massive, dark basement of a shipping warehouse, the air is thick with the smell of blood and fear. Gabriel, the head of the Rossi syndicate, flicks a tiny speck of blood off his custom Tom Ford suit. He's 34, has a terrifyingly calm vibe, and runs the city's entire criminal underworld with an iron fist. In front of him, tied to a chair, is a beat-up, terrified accountant. "I'll ask you one last time, Ree," Gabriel says, his voice a low, smooth rumble. "Where did my money go?" "The $3 million that was supposed to be cleaned through the clinics just vanished." "Lane!" The accountant sobs, spitting blood. "Dr. Lane, he had bad gambling debts. The Irish mob was on him. He siphoned the funds, Mr. Rossi. He bled the accounts dry to pay them off." Gabriel's pale blue eyes narrow. Dr. Alistair Lane. Gabriel had poured money into the Lane Institute, using it as a slick front for his business. But his link to the clinic was also way more personal. 5 years back, before surviving a hit that nearly paralyzed him, Gabriel had stored genetic material there. It was a backup plan from his old man to make sure the Rossi bloodline wouldn't end if the surgery went south. The surgery was a success. Gabriel completely forgot about the vault. "Silas," Gabriel murmurs to his underboss, a beast of a man in the shadows. "Take care of Ree, then get the cars ready. We're paying Dr. Lane a little visit." An hour later, the sleek glass doors of the Lane Institute are shattered. It's past midnight. The clinic is dark, but Gabriel and 3 of his guys get past the alarms with brutal speed. They find Dr. Lane in his office, frantically shoving stacks of cash into a duffel bag. Lane freezes solid when the doors click shut behind Gabriel, who's holding a silenced Beretta like it's no big deal. "Going somewhere, Alistair?" Gabriel asks smoothly. "Gabriel, Mr. Rossi, I can explain the money. It's a temporary issue. I was going to replace it all." Gabriel just holds up a hand, shutting him up. "I don't care about the money, Alistair. $3 million is a rounding error to me. What I care about is loyalty. You broke my trust." He nods to Silas, who slams Lane face down onto the mahogany desk. Silas pulls up the clinic's encrypted database on the computer. "Check the inventory," Gabriel orders. "I want to know exactly what this rat has been selling off." Silas's fingers blaze across the keyboard, cracking the encryption in seconds. Lists of names and biological assets pop up on the screen. And then, Silas just stops cold. His whole body goes rigid. "Boss," Silas says, his voice sounding weirdly tight. "You need to look at this." Gabriel steps behind the desk. On the screen is the log for Vault 7. Gabriel's private restricted vault. Asset profile 409. Status withdrawn. Date of transfer 5 months ago. Recipient Scarlett Hayes, a total civilian. No syndicate affiliation whatsoever. The silence in the room is so thick you could choke on it. Gabriel stares at the screen, his blue eyes turning dark as a storm. The realization hits him like a punch to the gut. His blood, the Rossi heir, was stolen, sold, and is now growing inside a complete stranger. Gabriel's hand shoots out, his fingers locking around Dr. Lane's throat with terrifying speed. He yanks the doctor off the desk. "What did you do?" Gabriel hisses, his cool facade cracking to show the monster underneath. I needed money," Lane chokes, his face turning purple. "She was desperate. She paid $500,000 under the table for premium genetics. I altered the records. I swear she doesn't know who you are. She thinks you're a private equity broker." "You sold my child," Gabriel states, the words tasting like poison. If his rivals, the Corsetti family, found out, they wouldn't even hesitate. They would find this woman. They'd butcher her and his unborn child just to shatter his legacy. Gabriel drops Lane, who crumples to the floor, gasping. Without even looking down, Gabriel raises the Beretta and pulls the trigger twice. The muffled thip-thip of the silencer instantly ends the doctor's life. Burn the servers. Burn the entire building down, Gabriel orders Silas, his voice completely empty of emotion. And get me everything there is on Scarlet Hayes. Where she works, where she sleeps, what she breathes. I want her found tonight. The storm finally broke over Boston just as Scarlet locked her front door. The rain hammered the streets, pushed by a vicious wind. She was exactly 22 weeks pregnant today. She puts a hand over the curve of her stomach, feeling a tiny, reassuring kick. "I know, little one," she whispers, smiling into the dark. "Mommy's getting the ice cream now, I promise. Model." So check it. Scarlet flips open her umbrella, heading out for a quick bodega run. But the streetlights are bugging out, giving off major horror movie vibes. Her neighborhood, normally crawling with professors and yuppies, is a complete ghost town tonight. As she hangs a right onto Elm Street, a blacked-out SUV is just sitting there, its engine a low growl under the rain. Scarlet gets a sudden, nasty chill that has nothing to do with the cold. Her survival instincts, basically collecting dust in her safe little world, suddenly go nuclear. She starts walking faster. Big mistake. The SUV doors pop open in sync. 3 dudes in suits step out into the downpour, completely blocking her way. Scarlet slams on the brakes, her heart trying to punch its way out of her chest. She grips her umbrella, taking a hesitant step back. "Excuse me," she says, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "You're blocking the sidewalk." The guys don't even twitch. Then the back door of the SUV swings open and the final boss emerges. Even in the middle of a storm, this guy commands the entire scene. He's a mountain, broad-shouldered in a dark overcoat protecting a designer suit. He steps under a flickering streetlight and Scarlet sees his face, sharp jaw, dark hair slicked down by the rain, and eyes that were a shocking, piercing pale blue. That description from the clinic's audio file explodes in her head, but that's impossible. The donor was anonymous. He was supposed to be a ghost. "Scarlet Hayes," the man says, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone. It's the exact voice from the audio file, the same voice that read her a poem about the ocean. But now all the warmth is gone, replaced by quiet, deadly authority. "Who are you?" she demands, wrapping her arms around her belly and turning away from him. "How do you know my name?" Gabriel moves closer. He gives her a full scan. Her soaked jacket, the absolute terror in her eyes, and then locks onto the unmissable curve of her stomach. His kid. A sudden, wild possessiveness rips through him. "My name is Gabriel Rossi," he states, stopping 2 feet away from her. The rain practically bounces off this dude. "And you are carrying something that belongs to me." Scarlet's breath catches in her throat. Rossi. The name hits her like a lightning bolt. Everybody in Boston knows that name. They own the docks, the unions, the politicians. They are the freaking mob. "No!" she gasps, stumbling backward. Her umbrella falls from her hand and clatters on the wet pavement. "No, you're wrong. I went to a clinic. I paid for a legal anonymous donor. My file said—" "Your file lied," Gabriel cuts in smoothly. "Dr. Lane sold you stolen property. He sold you my bloodline to cover his gambling debts. The man who sold you your fantasy was a thief. And tonight, he paid for that theft with his life. The meaning behind his words hits her like a freight train. Paid with his life. Raw, blinding panic takes over. Scarlet spins on her heel and just bolts in the opposite direction. She doesn't care about the storm or how slippery it is. She just has to escape. She doesn't even make it 5 yards. Strong arms wrap around her waist, careful to miss her stomach and lift her off the ground like she's nothing. She screams, fighting like a wildcat, her fists hammering against solid muscle. "Let me go! Help!" She shrieks, kicking frantically. Gabriel pins her arms, his grip like steel, but he's super careful not to put any pressure on her baby bump. "Stop fighting, Scarlet. If I wanted to hurt you, you'd already be dead." He carries her to the SUV and pretty much dumps her into the plush leather seats. He slides in after her, and the heavy door slams shut, instantly silencing the storm and her screams. From the front seat, Silas locks the doors and floors it. The SUV tears away from the curb. Scarlet scrambles to the far corner of the back seat, gasping for air, tears and rainwater mixing on her face. "What are you going to do to us?" she sobs, clutching her stomach. "Please, I didn't know. Take the money, I'll move away, I'll sign anything you want, just let me keep my baby." Gabriel unbuttons his wet overcoat, his face impossible to read as he watches her fall apart. She was a civilian, a complete normie, and totally out of her depth. "You don't understand the world you were just dragged into," Gabriel says, his tone dangerously calm. "In my world, blood is currency, blood is power, and blood is a target. The instant the Corsetti family finds out a Rossi heir is growing inside some unprotected architect, they'll send a hit squad to carve that child right out of you." Scarlet makes a choked sound, burying her face in her hands. "This was a nightmare. It had to be a nightmare." "You wanted a donor, Miss Hayes," Gabriel continues, leaning in. The smell of expensive cologne and rain fills the car. "But you chose a king, and my heirs don't grow up defenseless in 2-bedroom apartments." "So what?" she cried, glaring at him with pure, terrified defiance. "You're just going to lock me up and take my baby when it's born?" "I am going to keep you alive," Gabriel corrected her. "From this second on, you're a ghost. Your townhouse will be emptied out. Your job's about to be told you've relocated overseas. You belong to the Rossi syndicate now. You can't do this. You're kidnapping me." "I am saving you," Gabriel said with ice in his voice, turning to look out the tinted window at the blurry city lights. "Welcome to the family, Scarlet." The SUV sped into the night, aimed straight for the fortified gates of the Rossi compound. Scarlet touched her belly, shivering uncontrollably in the warm car. She'd spent a fortune trying to buy a perfectly peaceful life. What she got instead was a golden cage, and the monster holding the key was her own child's father. Scarlet woke up to the smell of espresso and the weird, heavy silence of a room that was way too big. She blinked at the morning light pouring through massive windows. Her mind was blank for a second before the weight of last night came crashing down on her. This wasn't her townhouse. This was a massive suite that looked like it belonged in a magazine for modern-day castles. The walls were covered in dark, cold walnut. The bed sheets were ridiculously high-end, and the door was locked from the outside. Sitting up, Scarlet put a hand on her stomach. "We're okay," she whispered to the baby, her voice trembling. "We're still here." On the nightstand was a silver tray with a hot cup of decaf, fresh fruit, and, creepily enough, her exact brand of prenatal vitamins. Next to that was her favorite lotion, lifted straight from her own bathroom. The violation of her privacy was absolute. They had packed up her entire life while she slept. The heavy oak door clicked open. Gabriel Russi walked in, dressed flawlessly in a charcoal three-piece suit without a tie. He looked less like a common thug and more like a stone-cold Wall Street CEO, which, in a way, he was. "Good morning," Gabriel said, his deep voice vibrating through the room. He didn't ask how she slept. He just walked to a seating area by the windows, sat in a leather chair, and watched her with those unnerving, pale blue eyes. "You can't keep me here," Scarlett said, pulling the covers up to her chest, trying to fake a confidence she definitely didn't feel. "I have a job. I have a life. I have appointments at the hospital. When I don't show up, people will notice." "Your firm got an email from you at 6 this morning," Gabriel answered smoothly, crossing his legs. "You accepted a very well-paying last-minute job to restore a historic estate in the Swiss Alps. Your apartment lease has been paid off and canceled. Your things are now in a storage unit under my name. As for your medical needs, Dr. Harrison, one of the best obstetricians in the state, is downstairs setting up a private clinic for you. You will want for nothing." Scarlett just stared, horrified at how efficiently he had deleted her. "You erased me in a single night." "I secured you," Gabriel corrected, his jaw tightening. "You seem to think you're a hostage, Scarlett. You're not. You're the mother of the Rossi heir. Out there, you're a target. In here, behind steel gates and 50 armed men, you are a queen." "I don't want to be a queen," she shot back, tears of pure frustration in her eyes. "I just wanted to be a mother. I bought a vial of cells from a clinic. I didn't sign up to join the mob." Gabriel stood up, closing the space between them in 3 long steps. He stopped by the bed, looming over her. The scent of bergamot and danger just poured off him. "You didn't buy cells. You bought my legacy," Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And my legacy doesn't just belong to you. The Corsetti family has spent 3 generations trying to wipe my family off the map. If Dominic Corsetti finds out you exist, he won't care one bit about your innocence." Gabriel drops a stone-cold threat. He'll literally carve the baby out of her just to make a point. Her new reality. She's staying right here, eating his food, seeing his doctors, and her only job is to stay alive. The weight of his words finally crushes her shock. She looks in his eyes and sees nothing but brutal honesty. "Yes," she chokes out. "Good," he says, flipping his ice-cold mask back on. He assigns a maid named Clara and a doctor's appointment. And just like that, for the next 3 weeks, Scarlett was trapped in a 5-star prison. She could wander the massive estate, but always with a heavily armed goon named Matteo trailing 20 paces back. She got a private chef, her own pool, and a library of rare books Gabriel got just for her. He treated her like a fragile object he owned, checking in twice daily with sterile questions about the baby. There was 0 warmth. She was just the incubator for his heir. But Scarlett's an architect. She knows structures, and she knows how to find the cracks. She watched the staff, the guard rotations, mapping the whole place in her head. And she watched Clara, the jumpy maid. The maid never made eye contact with the guards and was always sweating, even when it was freezing. One afternoon, Scarlett's chilling in her room when her fingers hit something hard under her pillow. She pulls it out, a cheap, disposable burner phone. Her heart starts hammering. She glances at the bathroom where Clara's running a bath, the water noise covering everything. Scarlett powers it on. One new message. We know he has you. We can get you out. Southgate, 2 a.m. tonight, D.C. Scarlett's breath catches. D.C. Dominic Corsetti, the rival boss. Scarlett sits there, the cheap phone practically burning her hand. The offer is insane. A way out, a chance to vanish. She can almost see herself grabbing a bag and running. But then she remembers Gabriel's dead, serious eyes. He will carve that child out of you. Why would his biggest rival save her? He wouldn't. He'd destroy Gabriel by taking out his heir before it could be born. That's not an escape plan. It's a death trap for her and her son. Scarlett gets up. She doesn't grab a bag. She doesn't wait for 2 a.m. She storms right out of her suite, ignoring the maid's shocked gasp, and marches down the staircase. Miss Hayes, Mateo says, popping out of the shadows to block her. You need to be resting. Take me to Gabriel, Scarlett snaps, her voice shaky but firm. Now! Mateo looks confused but obeys, leading her deep into the west wing to Gabriel's private study. He knocks once and opens the door. Gabriel's inside with Silas, looking over some papers. They both look up, totally surprised to see her barge in. Gabriel's eyes instantly flick to her stomach, checking for any harm before they meet hers. What's wrong? He asks, his voice sharp. Scarlett strides forward and slams the burner phone down on his desk. Your security is a joke, she announces, her voice echoing in the dead silent room. Clara left this. DC says he can spring me from the south gate tonight. The temperature in the room instantly plummets. Silas curses and reaches for his gun, but Gabriel just holds up a hand, shutting him down. He doesn't even look at the phone. He just looks at Scarlett. The icy look in his eyes cracks, showing a hint of shock and something else. Respect. You could have used it, Gabriel says, his voice low. You could have called him. You hate this place. I hate being a prisoner, Scarlett shoots back, clutching her stomach. But I'm not an idiot, Gabriel. I know Corsetti doesn't want to save me. He wants my baby dead. And no matter what kind of monster you are to everyone else, you're the only one who actually wants this child to live. Gabriel walks around the desk, stopping just inches away from her, making her breath hitch. He reaches out, his big hand hovering over the phone before snatching it. He crushes the cheap plastic, the snap echoing in the tense silence. Silas! Gabriel orders, his eyes locked on Scarlett's. Find Clara. I want to know everything she told them before you break her fingers. Then lock this place down, nobody in or out. Yes, boss, Silas says, and marches out. Gabriel turns back to Scarlett, who's trembling as the adrenaline fades. Without a word, he puts a hand on her lower back. A surprisingly gentle touch that sends a shock up her spine and guides her to a sofa. Sit, he commands softly. You're shaking. Are they coming? She asks, sinking into the couch. Corsetti has no patience, Gabriel mutters, pulling a heavy black Sig Sauer from a hidden safe and checking it like a pro. If he planned an extraction for 2 a.m., he's got a team close by. When you're a no-show, he'll likely force his way in. And right on cue, a deep, muffled boom rattles the bulletproof windows. The chandelier sways like crazy. A high-pitched alarm starts screaming through the entire estate. The lights flicker out, immediately replaced by a creepy red emergency glow. The South Gate! Gabriel grits out, his jaw clenched. Then all hell breaks loose. Gunfire erupts outside, a chaotic rhythm of violence. Scarlett gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. This is real. The action movie violence is literally at her front door. Gabriel is across the room in a split second, grabbing her arm and yanking her off the sofa. "We're moving to the bunker, now!" He hauls her into the hall, which is now pure, organized chaos. Armed men sprint past, yelling orders, and the air starts to smell like smoke. They hit the main foyer just as the huge front doors get slammed by something heavy. "Move!" Gabriel yells, shoving Scarlett behind him and raising his pistol. They sprint to a hidden door behind a giant tapestry. Gabriel punches in a code, and a heavy steel door slides open. He shoves her inside just as the estate's front doors finally splinter and burst open. Gabriel fires 3 quick shots into the foyer, dropping a masked intruder before diving into the safe room and slamming the steel door. It locks with a heavy thud, throwing them into darkness before the bunker's own lights flicker on. The room is small, concrete, and packed with survival supplies. The sudden silence is deafening after the chaos. Scarlett slides down the cold wall to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, trying not to cry. Gabriel is already on the security monitors, his eyes scanning feeds of his men battling on the lawn. He's a general watching his war, his face pure, brutal focus. Suddenly, Scarlett lets out a sharp gasp as a pain shoots across her stomach. She grabs herself, her eyes wide with fear. "Gabriel!" He whips around, gun dropping to his side, and is kneeling in front of her in a heartbeat. "Are you hit? Are you bleeding?" "No," she gasps, shutting her eyes. "It's not." It's the baby. Gabriel's hands hover over her, totally lost. A rare look of pure terror crosses his face. Carefully, he puts his large, warm hand right on her stomach. Under his palm, through her dress, a sharp, definite kick hits his hand. Then another one. Gabriel freezes. The sounds of the battle raging above them just fade away. He stares at her stomach, his blue eyes wide, completely floored by the tiny life pushing against his skin. It's the first time he's actually felt his child, not as a legacy or a bloodline, but as a real living part of him. He looks up and meets Scarlett's tear-filled eyes. In the dim red glow, the line between the ruthless mob boss and the scared mother just disappears, leaving 2 people terrified of losing the only thing that now matters. For one long, perfect moment inside that concrete box, the war outside might as well not exist. Gabriel Rossi, a man who built his entire empire on cold, hard calculation, was completely still. His hand stayed flat against Scarlett's stomach, his eyes fixed in the spot where his unborn son had just announced his arrival. Another little flutter pushed against his palm. It was a quiet little act of defiance against the hellscape they were in. He pulled his hand back, staring at it like it had just betrayed him. And just like that, the ice-cold armor of the Rossi Syndicate boss started to crack, showing the actual man underneath. He looked over at Scarlett, who was a trembling mess against the wall, trying to make herself small. "Did you feel that?" she choked out, her voice a ghost over the bunker's air system. "I felt it," Gabriel answered, his voice thick with a feeling he couldn't even name. "This isn't just a contract anymore. It's a life. His life." He stood, his pistol hanging forgotten at his hip, his whole vibe flipping from captor to hardcore protector. "You are safe, Scarlett. I'm betting my life on it. You're safe." Before she could even process that, the huge steel door of the bunker shuddered. The secure radio on Gabriel's belt screeched to life. "Boss," Silas's voice cut through the quiet, sounding ragged but solid. Hostels are down or gone. We lost 4. Perimeter is holding, but the main house is shot to hell. Gabriel's face went back to stone. The moment of vulnerability vanished, replaced by pure command. Copy. Get the cars ready. We're moving. He reached down, offering his hand to Scarlett. She looked at that hand, big, scarred, built for violence, and for the first time, didn't see a monster. She saw her only way out. She slipped her hand into his, and he pulled her up. His touch was surprisingly gentle, careful not to hurt her. Gabriel keyed the code, and the massive door hissed open, showing them the absolute disaster in the main hall. Scarlett gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The fancy walnut walls were torn to shreds by gunfire. The ancient tapestry that hid the bunker was now a smoldering pile on the floor. Glass from the huge front windows crunched underfoot like snow, glowing red from the emergency lights. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. 2 of Gabriel's men were hauling a body in tactical gear out of the busted front doors. "Don't look," Gabriel said softly, moving to block her view of a blood pool spreading by the stairs. He literally used his body as a shield, guiding her through the chaos. Outside, the storm was over, leaving a wet, freezing bite in the air. A convoy of 3 armored black Maybachs was idling hard in the driveway, their headlights slicing up the dark. Mateo stood by the middle ride, an M4 carbine hanging across his chest. He swung the reinforced door open as they walked up. Gabriel helped Scarlett into the rich leather seat before getting in next to her. Silas jumped in the front. "Where are we going?" Scarlett asked, her voice shaking as the cars tore down the driveway, leaving the smoking mansion behind. "The Seaport District," Gabriel replied, his eyes constantly scanning the dark tree line. "I have a secure penthouse at the Ritz-Carlton. It's a ghost property, bought through 3 different trusts. The security is military grade. The private elevator doesn't open for anyone unless I say so." "What about Clara?" Scarlett asked, her mind flashing back to the scared maid who started this whole mess. Silas half turned from the passenger seat. "She didn't make it, Miss Hayes. When the shooting kicked off, she panicked and tried to bolt through a side door, ran right into a crossfire from Corsetti's team." They didn't even give a damn about their own informant. A sick feeling washed over Scarlett. A woman was dead. Men were dead. All because of a procedure in a fancy clinic. The sheer amount of bloodshed was crushing her. Gabriel saw her go pale. He grabbed a bottle of water from the mini fridge, twisted it open, and put it in her hand. "Drink," he ordered, his voice low. "She was just a maid," Scarlett whispered, a tear breaking free. "She was so scared." "She was a loose end," Gabriel corrected, but his voice didn't have its usual razor edge. He leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "But she was also a sign of a much bigger problem. Corsetti's team blew right past the outer security. They knew the patrol schedule. They knew your exact room." Clara was just a pawn. There's no way she had access to that kind of top-tier intel. "What are you trying to say?" Scarlett asked, her hand trembling as she drank the water. "I'm saying we have a traitor way higher on the totem pole than some maid," Gabriel said, his eyes narrowing in the dark SUV. "And whoever they are, they've been setting this up for a long, long time. An attack that precise. That takes months of surveillance on my home." Scarlett's blood went ice cold as a horrible idea sparked in her mind. She looked at Gabriel as the lights of the Boston skyline painted his face. "Gabriel," she began, her voice quivering, Before all this, before the clinic, my architecture firm was bought by a private equity group. They moved my office to the ground floor. They gave us all new security systems, new phones, new laptops. It all happened right when I began my IVF treatments. Gabriel went completely rigid. The silence inside the armored car was suddenly suffocating. Silas spun around in his seat, shooting his boss a dark, knowing look. "What was the name of the private equity group?" Gabriel asked, his voice chillingly quiet. "Apex Holdings," Scarlett answered, her heart pounding like a drum. Gabriel pulled out a sleek, encrypted smartphone. "Silas, dig into Apex Holdings. Cross-reference their board with every known Corsetti front company for the last 5 years." The rest of the ride was a tense, awful quiet. City lights blurred past as they drove into the underground parking of the Ritz-Carlton. The move from the SUV to the private elevator was a flawless, silent operation run by Gabriel's crew. As the elevator shot towards the top floor, Gabriel finally met her eyes. The cold, unreadable mob boss was gone. In his place was a man just realizing how deep the betrayal against his family really went. "If Apex is Corsetti," Gabriel said quietly, just as the elevator dinged at the penthouse floor, "then they didn't just stumble onto you today, Scarlett. They've had eyes on you from the very beginning." The Ritz-Carlton penthouse was the polar opposite of the dark, heavy Rossi estate. It was a massive, modern space of glass, steel, and white marble with a panoramic 360-degree view of Boston Harbor. But for all its beauty, the reinforced steel doors and the heavily armed men at every entrance were a stark reminder that Scarlett had just swapped one fancy prison for another. By sunrise, which painted the harbor in shades of purple and gold, Dr. Harrison was already there. The physician was rushed in under armed guard and quickly set up a mobile medical station in the gigantic master suite. Scarlett lay on the plush bed, her hands gripping the sheets, while Dr. Harrison slid the cold wand of a fetal Doppler across her belly. Gabriel stood like a statue at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. He hadn't slept, and the stubble on his jaw made him look even more menacing. Suddenly, a fast, steady whoosh, whoosh, whoosh filled the room, a strong, healthy heartbeat. Scarlett gasped, her eyes closing in a wave of relief. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes and into her hair. "He's okay. He's really okay." Fetal heart rate is 145 beats per minute, Dr. Harrison said with a kind smile, handing her a towel. "No distress signals, no premature contractions. The baby handled the stress like a champ. You, however, Miss Hayes, have elevated blood pressure. I need you on strict bed rest for the next 48 hours. Gabriel gave the doctor a sharp nod. "Mateo will show you out. Leave the equipment." Once they were alone, Gabriel walked to the massive windows, staring out at the city as it woke up. The tension coming off him was so thick you could feel it. Scarlett sat up, pulling her silk robe tighter. Everything had changed between them during the attack. The animosity was gone, burned away, and replaced by a desperate, shared need to make it out of this alive. "Did Silas find anything on Apex Holdings?" Scarlett asked quietly, ending the silence. Gabriel didn't turn. He kept his eyes locked at the harbor. "He found exactly what we were afraid of. Apex Holdings is a front, 3 layers deep. The money trail leads straight to a wealth management firm in Zurich, a firm owned and controlled by Dominic Corsetti." Scarlett felt all the air get punched out of her lungs. "They owned my company. They had your whole life on a leash, Scarlett. Gabriel finally said, turning to her with eyes like a gathering storm. They ran your building's security. They scanned your work emails, your private calls. The second you Googled fertility clinics, they knew. Scarlett swung her legs off the bed, trashing the doctor's orders. Her mind, built for blueprints and stress points, was now assembling a terrifying new structure. She stood, walking silently toward Gabriel on the heated marble. "Wait," she breathed, her brow furrowed. "You said Dr. Lane sold my genetic material to pay off the Irish mob." "That was Reese's story," Gabriel confirmed, his jaw clenched tight. The accountant saw the books, but Reese only saw the numbers Lay wanted him to see. Scarlett shot back, the truth hitting her like a gut punch. She grabbed Gabriel's arm, her fingers digging into his expensive suit. "Gabriel, for real! If Corsetti owned my firm and they were watching my every move, how likely is it that I just happened to pick a clinic with the Rossi sample and the doctor just happened to make a mistake?" Gabriel's eyes widened, the insane logic of her words sinking in deep. "You're saying it wasn't an accident?" "I'm saying I was picked," Scarlett whispered, a cold sweat breaking out on her neck. "I'm 32, single, no close family. I live alone in a basic townhouse with crap security. I was the perfect defenseless target." She marched to the glass desk where Silas left a stack of hacked financial files from the clinic. She tore through the folders until she found the master ledger, her finger flying down the columns. "Look," she ordered, waving Gabriel over. He leaned in behind her, his chest brushing her back. Sending a shiver through her, she forced herself to ignore. "These deposits," Scarlett said, pointing to a series of huge wire transfers into Dr. Lane's offshore accounts. $3 million. They landed 6 months ago, right when I booked my first consultation. But check the routing numbers. These aren't from the Irish syndicate. The Irish use specific crypto tumblers out of Dublin." Gabriel stared at the numbers, his brain instantly recognizing the financial signature. "Cayman Islands. That routing prefix belongs to a bank used exclusively by the Corsetti family." "Lane didn't steal your legacy to clear a debt," Scarlett said, her voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "Corsetti paid him to do it." "Corsetti paid Dr. Lane $3 million to pull your restricted file, implant it in a completely unprotected civilian, and then set her loose." The silence in the room was crushing. The sheer, diabolical evil of the scheme was thick in the air. Dominic Corsetti didn't just want the Rossi line dead. He wanted Gabriel to have a front row seat. He wanted the child born into total vulnerability, completely cut off from the Rossi syndicate's protection, so Corsetti could slaughter them both with zero effort, sending the ultimate power play message. Gabriel's hands clamped onto the glass desk so hard his knuckles went bone white. A low, feral growl rumbled in his chest, the sound of pure, homicidal fury. He'd been played, and Scarlett had been used as a pawn in a war she never even knew was happening. "You were bait," Gabriel stated, the words tasting like poison. He looked at Scarlett, at her pale face, her terrified jaw, the way her hand shielded her stomach. She hadn't bought a sample. She had walked right into a sociopath's meticulously engineered trap. "They wanted me to carry your baby just so they could kill him to get to you," Scarlett cried, her control finally shattering. She stumbled back from the desk, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I was just an incubator for their revenge." In a move so fast it shocked her, Gabriel closed the distance and yanked her into his arms. It wasn't smooth, it was raw instinct. He wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair as she sobbed against him. He held her tight, a human anchor in her storm of panic. "You are not an incubator," Gabriel vowed, his voice a fierce growl by her ear. "You are the mother of my son, and I swear to you, Scarlet." Before this week ends, Dominic Corsetti will drown in his own blood. For the first time since this nightmare began, Scarlet wrapped her arms around Gabriel, clinging to him. In this bloody, terrifying new world, the ruthless mob boss was her only safe harbor. Suddenly, the sharp ring of a cell phone ripped through the quiet. It wasn't one of Gabriel's burner phones. It was the heavy, encrypted sat phone Silas had left on the desk, the line used only for syndicate-level emergencies. Gabriel eased back from Scarlet, his face hardening into a cold mask. He strode to the desk, staring at the flashing screen. No caller ID, just a string of zeros. He hit the speaker button, and the tension in the room became suffocating. "Rossi," Gabriel answered, his voice deadly calm. The click of a lighter, then a long, slow exhale of cigar smoke crackled through the speaker. Gabriel, a smooth, chilling voice replied, "I see you've moved the girl to the Ritz. A classy choice, way better than that drafty old mansion of yours." Scarlet's blood ran cold. It was him, Dominic Corsetti. "You crossed the line, Dominic," Gabriel said smoothly, though his free hand was clenched so tight his nails dug into his palm. "You targeted blood. The commission will never sanction this." Dominic laughed. It was a dry, dead sound. "The commission only cares what it can prove, Gabriel. And to the world, Miss Hayes is just a tragic civilian caught in the crossfire of a home invasion. It's a real shame. I hear she's lovely. Too bad she won't live to see the third trimester." Gabriel's blue eyes locked on Scarlet, burning with a lethal promise. "If you come anywhere near her, Dominic, I won't just kill you. I will dismantle your entire family root and stem. I will burn your legacy to ash." Big words from a man hiding in a glass tower, Dominic taunted. "Enjoy the view, Gabriel. The clock is ticking. You have 48 hours to surrender the port territories to me. If you don't, I'll send you the architect's head in a box." The line went dead. The threat hung in the pristine air, heavy and absolute. The war was no longer a shadow game. It was on their doorstep, with nowhere left to run. Gabriel put the phone down, turning to Scarlet with terrifying resolve. They weren't just playing defense anymore. They were going to war. The air was thick with Dominic Corsetti's ultimatum. 48 hours. 2 days before the Corsetti syndicate came to tear down everything. Gabriel stood by the desk, his mind already running the cold, hard math of war. "Silas," he commanded, his voice stripped of all emotion. "I want every man we have armed and on the street. Call in our favors from the docks. We hit their supply lines. We hit their safe houses. We burn them out of Boston before the sun sets." "Gabriel." "Wait," Scarlet interrupted, her voice cutting through the tension. She was by the window, staring out at the city's grid. "You hit them on the streets, you start a war that could drag on for months. You don't have months." "I don't have months." She put a hand over her stomach. "You need to cut the head off the snake tonight." "Dominic is locked down tight," Gabriel said, turning to her. "He runs his operation from the top of the Apex Tower. It's a fortress, biometric locks, reinforced steel, private security full of ex-military mercs. A direct hit would be a slaughter." "Not if you know the building's flaws," Scarlet said, a strange, fierce light in her eyes. She walked past him, grabbing a sleek silver laptop from the bag Clara had packed for her. "Before Apex moved me to the ground floor, I was the lead preservationist on their corporate acquisitions. My firm handled the retrofitting of the Apex Tower. Gabriel and Silas swapped a look of pure shock. Gabriel moved behind her as she flipped open the laptop, her fingers flying across the keys, blowing past security firewalls she herself had probably built. When Apex bought the tower, they used a big firm for the commercial assessment, but they hired us to map the structural integrity, Scarlett explained. Pulling up a complex 3D blueprint of a massive skyscraper, Dominic thinks he's untouchable up there. So this clown Dominic pimped out an old 1930s building with elevators and bulletproof glass, thinking he was safe. But he didn't count on Scarlett. She spots the fatal flaw. To support his new penthouse steel, his guys had to sink new pillars. To do that, they capped off old Prohibition-era vent shafts. Gabriel hears capped, not filled, and his eyes go wide. Scarlett confirms it. A 3-foot-wide tunnel runs right from the subway, ending behind the drywall in Dominic's private office. Turns out the contractors cheaped out, using sheet metal instead of concrete to seal it. A grin spreads across Gabriel's face. This is a backdoor straight into the enemy's den. He looks at Scarlett, the woman carrying his child, who just gave him the keys to the kingdom. He's floored, calling her extraordinary. He turns to his second in command. Silas, get the gear, we're going in. 3 hours later, they're in filthy sewer tunnels. Gabriel in all-black tactical armor with a submachine gun strapped to his chest. Silas and 6 of his deadliest hitters are flanking him. They find the shaft right where Scarlett's plans said it'd be, blocked by a welded iron grate. Silas uses a thermal charge, and with a quiet hiss, the way is clear. The climb is brutal, 400 feet straight up a pitch-black chimney. But Gabriel is running on pure fury. He thinks of Scarlett trapped in that bunker, of his unborn child used as a pawn. Dominic Corsetti made it personal. Tonight, the game ends. They get to the top of the shaft, right behind the sheet metal separating them from the office. Gabriel hears voices. With a silent signal, his men get ready. Silas plants a breaching strip. Gabriel counts down. 3, 2, 1. The explosion is insane in the small space. The metal and a huge chunk of drywall blow inward in a cloud of plaster dust. Gabriel walks through the smoke like a ghost. Dominic's elite guards watching the doors and elevators are totally blindsided by an attack from inside their own wall. Gabriel's team takes them down with terrifying speed. The whisper of suppressed guns fills the air, dropping guys before they can even pull their weapons. When the chaos clears, only one man is left standing against them. Dominic Corsetti. He's backed against his desk, a gold revolver shaking in his hand, his eyes wide with shock at the massive hole in his wall. How? He chokes out as a guard's blood splatters his tie. That's impossible. Gabriel strolls toward him, weapon down, his eyes radiating pure ice. You bought the building, Dominic, but you never learned its secrets. Dominic aims his shaking revolver. I'll kill you, Rossi. You, the architect, and the little bastard she's carrying. Gabriel doesn't even blink. He moves impossibly fast, grabs Dominic's wrist and twists with a loud snap. The gold gun hits the floor. Before Dominic can even yell, Gabriel knees him in the gut, dropping him to the ground, gasping. Gabriel stands over him, pulling his own Sig Sauer. He aims it right at Dominic's head. You messed up, Dominic, he says. His voice is a low, dangerous rumble. You saw my bloodline as a weakness. You thought she was just a vessel. Gabriel cocks the hammer, the click echoing in the bloody room. She is the matriarch of the Rossi family, and you are already dead. Gabriel fires. Rain was tapping on the penthouse glass when Gabriel got back. Scarlett was sitting in the dark, wrapped in a blanket, not having slept at all. When the suite door finally opened, her heart jumped. Gabriel appeared in the dim light, tactical gear gone, but his shirt stained with soot and dark red smears. He looked wrecked, savage, and like a total winner. He said nothing, walking right into the bathroom and cranking the shower to full blast. Scarlett dropped the blanket and followed. She watched from the doorway as he tore off the ruined shirt, showing a chest covered in old scars from a violent life. He got under the scalding water, bracing himself against the wall, washing his enemy's blood down the drain. She walked in, grabbed a clean towel, and just waited for him. When he finally turned the water off, the cold Mafia boss mask was gone. He looked at Scarlett, his eyes filled with a deep, crushing exhaustion. "It's over," Gabriel whispered. "Corsetti's gone. His people are giving up the port territories to Silas. The danger is gone, Scarlett. You're safe. The baby is safe." A sob broke from Scarlett's lips. She stepped up, wrapping the towel around his shoulders, but didn't let go. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, the man who burned down a city to save her. Gabriel's arms immediately wrapped around her, holding her tight, kissing her hair. "I was so scared you weren't coming back," she whispered into his skin. "I will always come back to you," Gabriel promised, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. "You're my family now, Scarlett. You and this child. No one will ever harm you again." 4 months later, the private maternity ward was locked down like a fortress. 2 armed guards in suits stood watch, turning everyone away. Inside the sunny delivery room, Gabriel's violent world felt a universe away. Scarlett was exhausted but glowing, a huge smile on her face. Gabriel sat in a chair right beside her bed. The ruthless crime boss of the Rossi Syndicate, a man who ran an empire of violence, was openly crying. He was holding a tiny swaddled baby, a boy with a tuft of dark hair, and Gabriel knew his own pale blue eyes. "He's perfect," Gabriel choked out, his voice cracking. He gently stroked the baby's cheek. "He's absolutely perfect." "He has your scowl," Scarlett teased, putting her hand over his. Gabriel looked up at her. Over the last 4 months, everything had changed. The cage was gone, replaced by a real, powerful bond. He'd been at every ultrasound, read all the parenting books, and slowly let her break down his defenses. She was no longer his prisoner, she was his queen. "What should we name him?" he asked, kissing her forehead. Scarlett looked at the man who had bought her, fought a war for her, and who she had unexpectedly fallen for. "Leo," she said softly. "Leo Rossi, it means lion." Gabriel broke into a huge, genuine smile. "Leo, the heir." He looked back at his son. "You're gonna rule the world, little lion. But not right now. Right now you just sleep." Scarlett leaned back as Gabriel placed Leo in her arms. She'd walked into that clinic 9 months ago, just wanting a quiet life and a child. She got a mafia king, a criminal empire, and a legacy built on violence. But as Gabriel wrapped his arms around them both, a shield against the world, she knew she'd never trade her wild, dangerous family for anything. Scarlett Hayes went to the Lane Institute for a simple life. With a checkbook and a dream, she tried to buy a baby. She ended up accidentally buying a whole criminal empire, kicking off a brutal underworld war. So get this. Out of all that chaos and backstabbing, these two somehow became ride or die. Gabriel Rossi, a total monster, starts catching feelings for the exact woman sent to destroy him. Talk about an epic plot twist. This wasn't some cute love story. They bonded by literally not dying together. That fancy cage she lived in, smashed. Now she's in a fortress built on insane loyalty. In the end, Scarlett got the family she always wanted. Only it was way more trigger-happy, fiercely protective, and beautifully unhinged than she ever dreamed of.
From a distance, this looks like a story about crime families, bloodlines, and retaliation, but in truth, it is a story about inheritance in its most haunting form. Gabriel believes he is protecting legacy. Scarlett believes she is choosing motherhood. Corsetti believes he is engineering pain. Yet each of them is trapped inside the same machine, a world where people are treated as vessels for power. The child has not even been born, and already his existence is being measured in terms of leverage, succession, and symbolic victory. That is the true horror of the story. Violence does not begin with the gunshot. It begins the moment a human life is reduced to a function. Vittories in these worlds are often illusions. Gabriel can kill his rival. He can fortify the penthouse. He can place guards at every door, but those acts do not erase the reality that the child entered a world prepared to weaponize him before he took his first breath. Scarlett's suffering also reveals something devastating. Innocence does not exempt a person from becoming a battlefield when powerful men build their identities around control. The deeper life lesson is about cycles. Gabriel inherited a doctrine of blood. Corsetti inherited a doctrine of domination. The clinic doctor merely monetized the logic both empires already accepted. People are assets, blood is currency, loyalty is ownership. Scarlett, ironically the least violent person in the story, becomes the clearest mirror of how corrupted that worldview is. She is the one who sees that the true crime is not merely murder. It is the architecture of dehumanization that makes murder feel strategic. And yet the story offers a fragile rebellion against that cycle. It happens not in the revenge but in recognition. When Gabriel first feels the child kick, power briefly loses its language. The heir stops being an heir. He becomes a life. That moment matters because it interrupts the mythology of empire. For one breath, fatherhood is not dominance. It is vulnerability. That is why the story resonates beyond its gangster frame. It reminds the audience that cycles of cruelty are not broken by strength alone. They are broken the moment someone refuses to see another human being as a tool. The most important transformation is not Gabriel becoming more dangerous. It is Gabriel becoming capable of reverence. The lesson then is painfully clear. Every cycle of violence begins with objectification, and every real escape from that cycle begins with recognition. The moment a person is seen not as legacy, bait, property, or proof, but simply as human, the machine loses a gear.